it? What do they call a tree doctor? Arborist. One day the arborist, he came in and he did the deed. What did he do? He cut that tree down. You hear me? He cut the tree down because of the Dutch elm disease. You couldn't save it by just cutting off those infected branches and trying to shake out the dead leaves. You can't just pinch those off and hope it's going to work. And when all those workers cut it down, there were like 80, 100 gallons or whatever of water that gushed all over from the root system. You see, the problem with laying the axe to the root is it's not quick and it's not easy. You've got to keep digging. That work isn't done until the root has been completely cut off. If we apply that principle to our spiritual life, our walk with the Lord, walking in the light of His truth, you've got to keep digging. You've got to keep working. And the work isn't done until the root has been cut off. It's been eliminated. Are you bearing unforgiveness? Is there any root of bitterness? Are there regrets? Are there still things of your past that is controlling you and manipulating you still today? If you are, you've not yet been set free. You've not been set free. Spiritual growth is sometimes very painful because we have to get down to the root of the issue. That leads me to mention a young man that this pastor had met at that church. To set the scene, you need to know that city churches, and some of you know the city churches are quite often very different from suburban churches, and certainly they're different from little rural churches. City churches are different because cities are different. Amen? Every city you go to, it's different. But not long after this new pastor had moved into the church, his predecessor said to him, "Brother, this is a transient church." Transient church. And I didn't exactly understand, and neither did his pastor understand exactly what was meant, but soon he would learn. There were young people that would flock to the big cities. And they would come for a job. They would come to go to school. They would come to be with their friends. They would come because the big city was exciting. And this church's location meant that they drew young adults from all across Chicagoland. Some were attending university, and some maybe in law schools or medical schools. Quite a few were entering the job market for the very first time. They had hundreds of people come and go every year. That's something most of us have never experienced. I know I have friends who are pastoring churches in some of our bigger cities in Michigan, and they've seen that, not by the hundreds, maybe by 50 or maybe 100. But some years we might turn over 4 or 5 people who came and they went. And the thing is, nobody ever stays forever, do they? See, at one point it was figured out that the average young person stayed in his church for about 18 months. And that means that they had become a one-stop shop, like those corner gas stations that double as grocery stores. No one stayed in the church forever. People would show up, stay a while, and then they would leave. Early in the pastor's ministry, a young man started attending. And he didn't know him. He didn't know where he came from. And he didn't know how he even found the church. He came from a Christian home, and he said that he knew the Lord. And he had a story to tell. Just so you know, you have a story. Every one of us has a story. But somewhere along the way, he tells that he made a wrong turn into sexual sin. And as a result, he contracted this disease that might one day take his life. Now, the pastor knew that much because he was open about everything he had done, everything he experienced in his past. So he hung around for about a year. He made some friends. He got involved. And then he disappeared. And it was said that was fairly typical at his church. During that year, the pastor only had one conversation of any length with this man. He asked him what he had learned from his journey. And one thing he remembered was this. He said, "Pastor, you've got to lay an axe at the root of the tree. You've got to lay an axe at the root of the tree." Now, this pastor didn't know exactly what he meant, and so he asked him to explain. The comment was, "It hurts too much for most people. You know, the young man shared what he had learned through his experience when dealing with entrenched sin. And you can't chop at the leaves. You can't just hack at the branches. You've got to get down to the root. And that hurts too much for people. And he added, believe me, I know. So why don't we get better? Why don't we get better? Why do we struggle with the same sin year in and year out? Why do we come to church faithfully and remain unchanged? We come in bitter, we go out bitter. We come in complaining, we go out complaining. We come in arrogant, we go out arrogant. We come in defeated, we go out defeated. How is that possible? Why don't we get better? Why don't we? Some people never seem to change even though they come to church. Even though they give their money, even though they sing the songs, even though they pray the prayers. They say amen when the preacher preaches, and they support some ministries and missionaries, and they might even attend a small group here and there. But they never seem to change. How is that possible? Why? Let me tell you why. Change is hard. While you're looking for the easy way, let me tell you, if you're looking for the easy way, your life will be hard. If you're willing to do the hard things, your life will be easy. Did you hear that? If you're looking for the easy way, your life will be hard. I mean, here's something they never told us in ministerial classes. Change is hard. It's painful. It's not easy. I mean, years ago I met a Christian counselor. I was actually going through some classes myself. And after the visit, he sent me some articles to review. And as I read through them, there was one that caught my eye. And it was a takeoff from the words of Jesus. And he said this in John 8:32. Anybody know what that says? John 8:32. You're going to know it now. You shall know the truth, and the truth will set you free. All right, John 8:22, what does it say? You shall know the truth, and the truth will set you free. So the counselor had printed these words on his paper. He made them large, and he bolded the print so that it would stand out. But then there was a note in capital letters, and the note read something like this. The truth will set you free. But it will hurt you first. The truth will set you free. But it will hurt you first. Now, I recently, a few weeks ago, ran across some of those articles, and maybe I'll tell you that part of my inspiration has come from this. Did you ever have a light bulb moment? You know, one of those things that, ding, I got it. That happens when the truth hits you by surprise. It was like a light bulb going on over my head. Again, even after a few weeks ago, and I read this again, and in one blinding flash, I saw truth about myself and everybody else in church. Let me give you this. Truth is not our problem. We've got the truth coming out of our eyeballs. We've got the gospel preachers and the Bible teaching churches, and we've got an internet full of good teachers. We've got CDs, DVDs, YouTube. We've got Christian radio and TV. We've got Bible conferences where you can hear good Bible teaching all the year round, every day of the year. Listen, no, our problem is not a lack of truth. We know the truth. But it never seems to change us. Why is that? Somehow, we come to church, we go home unchanged. How does it happen? Well, I come back to what was said, written on that paper. The truth will set you free, but it'll hurt you first. Do you remember, how many of you have ever watched Star Trek? I mean, any of the series that went on for 50 years or however many, whatever happened, you know. And I'm thinking Star Trek right now because as I see it, you know, we see the Star Trek, we see the Starship Enterprise, and it was about to be attacked by the enemies, the Klingons, the Romulans, whoever it happened to be.